Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Later in the show, we'll learn about the Rio Salado Audubon Center with Sam Gomez and Patty Talahongva. But right now, host Lanasha Puwadi talks with Katreena Hayes-Wood about the upcoming Native American Women's Conference.
I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. The Native American Women's Conference is a full-day annual conference that will be held on Friday, November 3rd, and is dedicated to the issues that affect Native American women. On the phone with me to explain the conference is Katreena Hayes-Wood, owner of Career Service Network. Hello, Katreena. It's an honor to have you on our show today.
Thank you, Lawasha. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. And before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, my company is Career Services Network. I'm a professional trainer and speaker, and I work with Native American communities all over the United States. But more importantly, I am a co-founder, and I am on the planning committee for the Native American Women's Conference.
Oh, wow. That's so awesome. And tell us about the conference.
Well, the fun thing about the conference is it started I was speaking at the Arizona Private School Conference back in 2013. I met a delightful woman by the name of Bridget Blixt, and she was at the time she was working for Phoenix Indian Center. We wanted to get to know one another better and find out ways that we could collaborate. We met for lunch, and I shared an idea about always wanting to do a conference for Native American women. She also shared that dream. And so we started talking about it. We gathered a group of Native women and said, here's what we want to do. We planned it out, but our biggest obstacle was we didn't have the money. Well, my mother passed away in 2015, and she left me a small inheritance. And with that money, we decided to use it to do the first Native American Women's Conference, which happened in 2016. And one of the cool things that we do at the conference, we have a resale boutique called Cleo's Closet. My mom's name was Cleo. She was a fashionista. And everybody who comes to the conference gets $10 of Cleo's cash to go into the little boutique and buy work clothes. So it took off. It made sense. And, we're building momentum, and it's really awesome to be a part of something like that.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing. And can you tell us about your 3 pillars?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It actually evolved from this idea that the biggest complaint most conference goers have is that they keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. So we decided to have 3 pillars where we have a different theme, and then we circle back to that first pillar on the 4th year. So year 1 is health, wellness, and healing. This year happens to be that particular pillar. We've circled back now the 3rd time for it. Then the 2nd pillar, which would be the 2nd year, we did career and life purpose. And then the 3rd pillar was leadership and life and financial planning. And then what happens, once we've gone through the 3 pillars, as I mentioned, we circle back to pillar 1 and start over again. That way, content is fresh. Anything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years that's new, that will also evolve and bubble up as things that we focus on that particular pillar.
Wow, it sounds like this conference is going to have a lot of information and resources. Can you tell us, where is the conference going to be held?
At Wild Horse Pass Resort and Casino. And it's been there since 2019 with a little hiccup of 2020.
And who should attend this conference?
I think any woman would just love this conference because it's motivational, it's upbeat, it's informative. It just has a really, really awesome vibe. But Native women in particular, of course, it can be professionals, it can be elders, it can be your grandmother, your mother, your daughter, your aunties, and maybe we could throw in a couple of really brave men.
And what topics are going to be covered during this conference?
So we have an interesting format. We've always used roundtables in the afternoon. So we start off with the keynote, and she's going to be, Dr. Juliana Reese is our keynote, and she's going to be focusing on the Hear Her campaign, which is really about, and interestingly, it affects 2 to 3 times more Native American, Alaskan Natives, and Black American women, and it has to do with pregnancy and postpartum issues. So she's going to cover that. Then we have a plenary later in the morning, which is going to be focused on the MMIP human trafficking issue, child abuse and safety in the rainbow community. And that plenary will just field questions from the audience about those issues that we need real questions and data and resources. In the afternoon, we have those roundtables in the main room, which is a very intimate sit down with at a round table, conference table, and have a conversation with the presenter about topics. Some of the topics include, one woman is doing a thing called a Stitch in Time, just sitting around. They're going to be sewing medicine bags and sharing stories about sewing with their mothers and grandmothers. The importance of animals in Native American communities, dental health, and how it affects our overall health. Learning to say no, how it builds our self-esteem, journaling, holistic nutrition. One of them that I thought was kind of fun, I actually have a horticulturist who's going to be attending from the Mississippi Band of Choctaw just for this roundtable, and it's what is dirt and why is it good for you? I thought that was kind of an interesting take. So and then we also had 3 breakouts this year, and that's a first for us. Generally, we have those intimate roundtables, but a breakout is a room, as you know, where we'll have 60 women can sit and be there for 85 minutes. The roundtables are 45 minutes each, so it's kind of like speed dating for conferences. You sit down, you get your information, you move to the next table. But our breakouts this year are Embracing Your Worth by Dr. Brenda Combs, Health and Wealth, Health is Wealth with LaToya Yarborough, and then Movement and Medicine, Movement and Music is Medicine with Selena Garza, who, by the way, used to be on our planning committee. So, and those are the topics that we'll be covering this year. There are more, but I don't have them all written down in front of me. So.
Oh, wow. That is so amazing. And are you going to have any vendors or other exhibitors there as well?
We are. We have 28 exhibitors and vendors. Vendors being the people who are selling Native jewelry and art, and then the exhibitors are companies and organizations. Native Health will be there as an example. The CDC is going to be there, and we just have a plethora of wonderful Native artisans that will be there as well. Interestingly, we opened registration for our vendor and exhibit booths in the second week of July, and by the end of July they were sold out. So, yeah.
Oh, and speaking of registrations, is there still time to register for this conference?
There is, but I have to let people know we sold out last year, 2 weeks before the conference, and we are ahead of schedule on registrations. We tap out at 350, not because that's our magic number. That's just the number we can't go over based on the space available to us. So, yeah, so if you're going to register, you need to get on it. But if you go to the webpage, it's easy to do. So,
can you tell us any favorite success stories?
So remember in 2020 when everything in the whole wide world shut down and everybody was trying to do virtual stuff? Well, I have a client, I work with the Tlingit Haida tribe in Alaska, and they had hired me to do ongoing webinars every week to kind of fill in the gap for their training needs for people who are homebound. Well, the Native American Women's Conference, we got together for our planning committee, and you guys, we're not going to be able to have a in-person conference. What do you guys think about virtual? And so we pulled it off. It was absolutely spectacular. We had Sharice Davids. She's a congresswoman, as you know, from Kansas. We also had a pre-recorded from Deb Howland. We had a cellist from Seattle. We had an art therapist who came on during lunch. We had a makeover from Vidal Sassoon here in Phoenix. We have one of our Native American partners who works for them, and we pulled it off. We had people from Canada and the Eastern Seaboard and all over the United States and Alaska, people who normally couldn't come to a one-day in-person conference because to justify the cost for a one-day conference to travel that far. But with the virtual conference, we really increased the breadth and the depth of our conference and its reach.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. And kind of talking about how your conferences has evolved, can you let us know where do you see the conference in 5 years?
That's a really good question. I'm a business owner, so I know that, we knew the first couple of years that we would lose money, and we did. But we've reached a point now where we're ready to apply for a 501c3. In fact, we're meeting with an attorney this month. The paperwork should be filed and ready to go by the end of the year. We started off with a small conference of about 150 people, and then it went to we had 150 people. Then the next year it was 200. And then what happened in 2019, we really had this momentum, but then 2020 happened, and we kind of had to, step back and punt. 2021, that momentum started building, and last year we sold out. So we know next year we already have Wild Horse Pass, the entire new section, which can house up to 650 people. So we feel confident we can double our numbers by next year. On the evaluations that we do every year, Lawasha, what we're getting is people are asking for a multi-day conference. We are not financially in a situation to do that, but the 501c3 will allow us to do that. So once that happens, we'll start applying for grants, and then the goal is in 2026 we will have a 2-day conference. So that's kind of rolling it out a few years, and then beyond that, the next step would be for us to offer a conference somewhere else in the United States at a different time of year. So if someone couldn't come to the November conference, maybe they could come to the May conference, as an example.
Oh, wow. That would be pretty exciting. And that is great to hear. Katreena, can you let our listeners know where they can go to learn more about the conference and how they can contact you if they have further questions?
Thank you for asking that. Well, they can always go to our webpage, which is www.nawc, like Native American Women's Conference, nawc-az.com. You can also email us at info@nawc-az.com as well. You can follow us. You can like us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So we really have a social media presence. We want to engage. So if you want to know more, all you have to do is look or reach out through an email, and we can send you links. But if you want to register, go to the webpage, click on the registration button. Literally, there's a link that will take you to an online registration where you can fill out your registration. You'll immediately get, an invoice, and then you can make the magic happen, and we'll see you in November.
That's awesome. Well, I would like to thank you, Katreena, for taking time out to talk to us today to tell us more about the Native American Women's Conference coming up here on Friday, November 3rd.
Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate your time, Lawasha.
Coming up, we'll learn about the Rio Salado Audubon Center. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. In the studio is Sam Gomez, Executive Director and founder of Salado Gallery, and Patty Talahongva, Community Volunteer. Hello, Sam and Patty. It's an honor to have you both on our show today.
Buenos dias. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lanasha.
And before we get started, can you both tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Well, I have called Phoenix home for several decades. Have really enjoyed it. And we're coming into the time of the year where we have the Native American Recognition Days. And I remember when they were started and how it was just like a few days. And then it expanded to a week and then to 2 weeks. And now we have several months of events going on for Native American Recognition Days. And it's exciting to see. And I tell people all the time, when I travel, Phoenix has the most vibrant urban Indian community because we have so many events that we do to honor our various cultures and heritage. So I've lived here for a long time. I'm Hopi. My reservation is 4.5 hours north. I'm from First Mesa, and I'm from the Corn Clan.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction, Patty. And Sam?
Yeah, my name's Sam Gomez, born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. I live in South Phoenix. I've lived pretty much around a lot of more of the barrios of Phoenix, from the Garfield 9th Street neighborhood to the west side, Carhaden area, 35th and Van Buren, and then South Phoenix off of Central Avenue and Baseline. I grew up around a lot of diversity, but I also grew up around like the subculture of like skateboarding, riding bikes, and the subculture of hip hop. I identify as a Chicano from Mexican descent, also like Phoenician. I always consider myself from a tribe called Phoenix, because I was just talking to someone earlier, and we were just like, there's something about being born here. There's something spiritual about it, and like I really look at the bird, the Phoenix bird, as like this spiritual, like deity or something that kind of guides me in a sense. And so just being proud of being from this place, and I think this is kind of how it reflects the work that I do, all the time that I've been putting into arts and culture. From a practice in the 90s, and then as time went by, is putting it into more of a profession and able to give back, to my community, especially from growing up, in, I would say, early 90s, when there was a lot of gangs, a lot of violence. There was gangs everywhere, and just feels good to forward that I'm now providing a safe place and now embracing our culture, versus before it was kind of like destroying our culture. We were killing ourselves, and now we're embracing ourselves and our voices, and now our art is our weaponry versus the gun that we used to walk around thinking we were tough and owning blocks, but we weren't owning anything. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm just looking forward to the future and just continuing to work with our partnerships in the Valley.
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm excited to hear more. But to start off, can you tell us more about the work you've been doing at the Rio Salado Audubon Center?
So I think my work really started there about 7 years ago, when we first opened up the gallery in South Phoenix, and I was brought to the first meeting, the South Central Collaborative meeting, which is a group of different nonprofits, groups, residents, business owners, stakeholders who got together wanted to make sure that that this light rail development is going to go in the right direction. So immediately when they mentioned about the light rail and artists to be selected, or the artwork, I immediately wanted to make sure that our cultural identity, along with all the history of Phoenix, would be there. And that was almost like my way of at first I was like, man, light rail, knowing how light rail has been very not so positive in other areas, when we talk about gentrification and displacement and businesses, small business being hurt. So I wanted to okay, how am I going to fight this in a sense? And it's a double-edged sword. So I just at least if I can make sure that there's equity there for our culture, equity there for the artists, that's one way that I can do in my road with my tools to fight this, because I don't know about development or real estate and how that works, nor do I have the money to go and start land grabbing for our people. So I'm like, all right, well, let's use arts and culture And I think, with that, I was also, I think going to the Rio, I was asked by, at that time, she was a councilwoman for South Phoenix, Mayor Gallegos, and then she, I think seeing all the work that we did and being able to accomplish with the partnerships to get 95% of the artists that got selected for the light rail were local. And that was because we really pushed putting out RFQ workshops so the artists can understand, like, what is an RFQ? Like, what is the language? I didn't even know what an RFQ was, but I had to learn. And then luckily I had partnerships that can do a workshop. And we started doing that, and it started getting echo. And so because of that, like 95% of the artists for the light rail project were local artists, which secured like over $1.5+ million. And so with that, going back to the Central Avenue Bridge, because of that work and because of my advocacy and because of just like my relationship with the community and artists, I guess they just identified me as someone like, well, let's see what the Salado or Sam they can think of for the Central Avenue Bridge, something that could create some type of iconic place or a new destination to go to for locals and for people coming and visiting. So when I was asked about that, I was able to, with partnerships at the time, Gold Evans, now Multi Studios, they were able to treat me like a client, like a developer. They were able to get some of my concepts and ideas from spending time at the Rio Salado on Central Avenue, taking photos of sunsets, seeing how community engages there, but also understanding that a lot of the community, surrounding community, doesn't even know that they're allowed there. So I was like, okay, so what we did is, I came up with the concept, was able to share that, and I really started like really pivoting on how community is able to advocate itself for design, and having the right partnerships like Gold Evans at the time, and now Multi Studios. They were able to get me these renderings as if I was like this multi-million-dollar developer. And when I was able to sit with the other contractors from the light rail to show them this, they were like taken back because I wasn't coming with the scratch paper, like, well, we'll do a mural here. And like, I came with this whole, like, we're going to redo the bridge. We're going to create these lookout decks, and we're going to create education and make, create the bridge where it's a connection to the Rio. So it was just like very thought out with the health equity component there, because there's a lot of walkways and pathways. So in some of our renderings, we made it so people can identify that they could go down there and walk. They could go down there and ride their bike. They could go down there and hike. So there was the health equity there, and I think that's where Maricopa County Health Health Department was really, hey, how can we help? How can we? But there's that work, and then really activating the Audubon Center. As we know, it's been there for a while. I know they were struggling, and like 2 years ago, Gennaro Garcia, rest in peace. The little time that he was there for about 6 or 9 months, I mean, he really like opened up the floodgates of like allowing community to feel welcome and to allow community to activate it. And when he passed away out of nowhere, it really took us back a little bit. But we still are going to continue his work and honor him with the work that we're doing. And then now working with a developer who purchased some property over there. Once again, it's one of those situations where like development's coming, we can't stop it. And how we're going to pivot and how we're going to create equity and how we're going to learn and get mentorship from this work. So I try to kind of like involve myself, but also making sure that there's a balance with what we're doing, and that we always say this, and it's like if we're not at the table, we're on the menu, and we have to make sure that we stay at the table even in those uncomfortable places and with people what we might not agree with, but once again we have to be there, otherwise they'll say, well, the community didn't speak out, they didn't reach out. So I just have a lot of how would you say it, sweat equity, and I would say that we're one of the biggest arts and culture stakeholders at the Rio, and that we're committed there, and we see a long-term vision. So like it's just there's a lot of like cultivating that's happening there. So I just I consider that like it's like our home.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's our home. So that's some of the work that, and why I'm so connected to the Rio Salado on South Central. I'm like
And can you share with us what are some of your initiatives in South Phoenix?
I think right now one of our initiatives, is I think when we talk about the South Central, we have this philosophy that we kind of started called the cultural chakras. And the cultural chakras, of course, it comes from a spiritual, there's a spiritual foundation to that. And when people hear like chakras, it's like, oh, what is that? And then when you know, cultural, it's like, what does that mean? And so kind of creating new language. But the cultural chakras basically is identifying these points of pride and these places where people gather on the corridor that create that energy from the people. The cultural chakras is kind of like part of like the conscious development and how we're going to invest and how we're going to work with partners to activate these places where people already kind of like are doing like placekeeping. One is the South Plaza with the lowrider community. It's well known throughout the country. It's like it's a basically like a lowrider cultural center in a plaza, and like how we're going to improve that space so there's shade, there's places to sit with your family. Because right now it's just a parking lot and people just activate it. And with the light rail, it's one of those things like what's going to happen to our lowrider cultural community that gathers there every first Sunday at sunset, you know, and it's like tradition. So I think cultural chakras is kind of another way to identify these places, like the El Pastor station. If you drive by there, it's more occupied by pigeons, and the Phoenix police use that building for training and their dog training or some other stuff. And it's like, you know, the paradox of like the community should be activating that. And El Pastor, if he was still here, rest in peace, that he would want to see the vibrancy of the community and the celebration. So we're working on a proposal to activate that place, because if you go walk it, it's set up for a mercado. It's set up beautifully. It has bathrooms, it has a waterfall, like it has shade, it's like it has trees, it has places to sit, but nobody uses it. So once again, it's like we see that as another project for the cultural chakras. So like all these places that have been underused and underserved is activating and bringing that energy, and the way you do that is through arts and culture. And programming, because you can build it, but if you got no programming, nobody's going to use it. So I always say like structures are great and architecture is great, but you got no programming, you got no soul. It's just like a body that just lays there and not being used. So that's a little bit of like one of the initiatives. And then of course now with the Rio Salado and the restoration and what we're doing with the group now on with the invasive plant species that are there, and kind of diving in more now with the ecosystem, as well as the continuation of activating the Audubon Center and surrounding, and possibly bringing a new cultural center there that is driven by arts and culture and design, and that's a steward to the ecosystem of the Rio.
Oh, yes. And Sam, what have been some of the milestone as well as challenges in South Phoenix or Rio Salado?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the milestones, I would say, you know, like getting the artists selected and making sure that our cultural identity is kind of like our first milestone. I mean, because it's going to be at every major cross-section in South Central. So that also, like, when that goes up, it's going to be like, it's now going to like revamp and kind of revitalize anything that people maybe been kind of like being like tainted or being lost for the new generation. So now they're going to hear these stories like, what does this mean, and who is this artist, and why this and all that. So we also looked at as like, these are just another extension to the cultural chakras, as well as a way to educate people of the dynamics and the diversity of South Phoenix. And we always say that South Phoenix is the soul of Phoenix because of all the agriculture and all the like the prime fertilized land that was there and all that. And now like when you see it, it's just all development. And it's like, you know, it's a double-edged sword with development, you know, but we also have to like innovate with it, but also to take ownership, and also to like how we're going to bring some of what we lost and how we're going to revive it and bring it back. So it kind of goes back to the soul of Phoenix when it comes to that resiliency and the rebirth and that constant cycle here, because this place is a hard place to live, you know, and you have to be resilient and you have to be patient, and, you know, and there's so much layers to that. So, and I would say, you know, along with what we're doing now at the Rio, that's another milestone, is bringing people together from different groups, different tribes, you know, and coming together and having like this ownership and this dialogue of like the importance of this and being protectors of the Salt River, you know, as well as like people like myself who I'm Chicano, but I'm also like very aware of the history here of the tribes, and I need to learn more, and I want to learn more, and I want our community of our Chicano and Chicana community to learn more. And like, how do we do that, you know? And we do that through the means of cultural practices, of meeting at the Rio and pulling out plant species and sharing our foods. And I think that's the true essence of it. So that's another like milestone that I see, that we're building these cultural bridges now. As we know, like it can get very territorial even in our like Raza community, when we talk about bureaucracy and funding and nonprofit and complex and all that, it gets really like, it can get divisive even in our own community. And I probably, you guys understand, even like in reservations and tribal community and council, and all that, it can get, it gets really weird. But I think what we're doing now at the Rio is kind of creating that healing, and it's just a continuation too of just a long-term road that we have. But I would say any of the other struggles, struggles would be just like, having to deal with the bureaucracy when the community has a clear vision, it has the skill sets, but it doesn't have the tools and the resources to take down land, to do what it really wants to do without the bureaucracy or without being dictated or without saying, well, we can't do that. Well, what does this look like? And I think we need those. Those are the struggles. It's just the bureaucracy there. And I think, and I'm sure the city of Phoenix they're doing a lot of great work in one area, but there are also other areas that are a little, there's a struggle there, and there's capacity that everybody, and we all know, like, if you don't have capacity in your team or in your group, that it just makes everything that can be so simple so hard. But I would say some of the struggles is just like taking more ownership to land and having the resources to build and to create this programming that we can do in 3 to 6 months versus it taking 2 years of just back and forth conversation, which we're all getting older. And when we're trying to mentor the younger generation, when they see like how much we sacrifice and suffer, they have to be like, man, do I really want to do that? Is it really worth it? So we also have to kind of create these pathways and this strong foundation that it shouldn't take this long. So they're looking at us, and whatever we leave behind, they're going to have to, take that from where it's at. And so we want to make it a little easier. We don't want to hand everything to everybody so easy, but we don't want to have them to do something that should have been done 3 years ago, and now they're still doing the same fight. And those are some of the things that the elders probably look at and like, man. And that's why it's important to hear what the elders have to say and their wisdom, because they're going to guide you. They're going to give you that compass. So I'm always like, and we're the ancestors of tomorrow. So we're going to have to be careful what we say, and and we're going to make mistakes, and we got to we got to take ownership on some things.
Yes.
But so anyways, that's a little bit of the struggles and milestones that I can say that are there. There's a lot more, but.
Yeah. Oh, no, I really like what you said. We are the ancestors of tomorrow. That is amazing. And Sam, I know another of a initiative that you worked on was creating a sculpture that changes color with air quality. Can you tell us more about that project that you did? Yeah,
that's like right now we don't have a name for it. We just call it the obelisk. But I was working with some friends and coworkers from ASU. Martha Birbes and Grace Logan and Monique and others, and like we kind of started this conversation maybe like 2.5 years ago when they wanted to kind of create something artistic to create awareness for the air around us. And so we took a little bit of time, but then we figured out, like me and Selena Martinez, who is part of and leads our Design Empowerment PHX workshop, or kind of practice, which teach people about design thinking. So we came up with this obelisk with this cultural Southwest like laser cut, and basically what it is, it's a 13-foot obelisk with Southwest theme designs, and basically it lights up. We just got the technology in there. We got a troubleshoot something because it didn't light up yet, and I think it's something minor that they have to come and check. But what it is, we wanted to create an artistic approach to create awareness of the air around us, versus it being like the monitors that you see on some of the roofs, and like nobody knows what that is. They look more like surveillance stuff, and people. But we wanted to create something that's like artistic, cultural, and that's going to engage people to this like public art piece. But when they see the QR codes and it talks about the actual project and what it is, and then it also talks about the history surrounding them. So and that at the top they'll have a air quality sensor. And that sensor will talk to the other 5 sensors in the valley. And then you'll be able to use like an app or the link, and it'll be able to tell you like every 15 minutes it updates and it lets you know like how bad the air is or how good it is. And so the goal for it to light up at night is to, like, when it's red, it's bad. When it's yellow, it's mediocre. And when it's green, it's pretty good. And that's just like one way to engage communities and low-income communities like South Phoenix and abroad to just kind of like be engaged more with, environmental issues, because we know that can get very bureaucratic. And sometimes it just turns people off. It's just like, nobody wants to get involved. It's like, let them take care of that. But I think if we can get people involved with the culture, the arts, and just like, and some people might not care about the actual, what it does, but at the end of the day, there's a beautiful art piece in your community. So that's kind of like, about that project. It's an artistic approach to create environmental awareness in low-income communities and abroad.
And kind of talking about bringing environmental awareness and just talking about that, can you tell us what is StinkNet?
Well, I think I will let Patty drop some science on that. She's the StinkNet queen.
Well, I have to say, StinkNet brought me and Sam together.
Yeah.
So the weed is good for one, that invasive colonizing species.
Right.
So years ago, before the pandemic hit, I was out on a hike in North Scottsdale, and it was being led by Dan Gruber. And he is a land steward with the Sonoran Desert Conservancy. And Dan, as we were learning about the soil and we were learning more about the plants, going beyond the cactus out in the desert, as we were finishing up our hike, he looked down, he saw this plant, and he said, "This is an invasive species from Africa. And when you see it, you need to pull it out by the roots." And he said it's called StinkNet. So you want to have a bag or something to cover your hand because it's oily, and that oil will get on your hands and it stinks. That's why the nickname, I don't know the scientific name, but the nickname is StinkNet. So he demonstrated how you pull it out by the roots, and the roots are shallow, so it came out pretty easily. And he said you want to put this in a bag, tie it up, and throw it in the trash, get rid of it. The people have probably seen this everywhere, and it's not on your radar. You don't know how bad it is, but they grow maybe about 12 or 14 inches tall. They can get kind of bushy, but they're not really, really tall. So they're 14 inches or so, and they're distinguished by a bright yellow bulb, and it looks like a tennis ball. So that green plant with little tennis balls all over them. Those balls have tons of seeds. So that's why you want to pull it out by the root. You want to, put it in a bag. And I guess the best thing would be to burn it, but you don't want to set fires all over it. And that's another problem with the StinkNet. It is oily. And again, that oil is what gets on your hands. So we know that people with allergies, when they walk by a field of StinkNet, their allergies kick in because they can it's irritating their eyes, their sinuses, everything. And so, again, you want to take it, put a bag around your hand and, pull it out by the roots and stick it in another bag. Again, I learned about it before the pandemic hit. And at that time, Maricopa County actually had a phone number where you could call in and tell them where you found a new growth of StinkNet. And they were mapping it because they were trying to get it under control. And they had volunteer groups who would go out and pull this StinkNet in different parts of the valley. Well, unfortunately, the pandemic hit and everything was shut down. And even though, we were outside, we could have been socially distancing and still continuing to pull the StinkNet, all of that volunteer effort was closed. So it gave that weed years to flourish. And it has. And now you see it everywhere. It drives me crazy. And it drives my friends crazy because when I'm out hiking and walking with them, I see the weed and I start trying to pull as many as I can. And they're like, oh, here we go again. But, I think that if all of us did something, we could get it under control, even now. So that's what we've been doing. And earlier this summer, a community group got together and they invited me to come out and start pulling the StinkNet. And it was at the Audubon Center. So I said, I'm all for it. I'm happy to do this because something I believe in taking care of our desert, not just picking up trash, but looking at these invasive species that are here. So I took a quick drive out to the Audubon Center. And as I drove around the front, I realized just between the road and the sidewalk, there's a little strip of land. It was filled with stinknet.
Oh, wow.
And even in the grounds, that are a part of the Audubon Center, packed with stinknet. So I said, okay, our first thing is to clear this area out, clean it up. And so that's what we started to do. And I have to say, our volunteers are amazing. They came out all summer long, and we were meeting at like 5 in the morning.
5, 6 in the morning.
5 in the morning.
July,
so that's a sacrifice you were talking about, right,
yeah.
Sam? So I'm Hopi. We're used to getting up early. We're out there, and but I understand it's not everyone's culture. But 5 o'clock in the morning in the summertime, that's when you want to be out, because 6 o'clock it starts to get hot. 7 o'clock you better be home or somewhere inside, right? So kudos to our volunteers. There's so many. All these people who just came out, and we didn't know each other. We just put the word out and said, "Hey, if you want to come help us, let's do that." And people showed up. You're meeting new people, and you're all coming together just to help clean the environment, to get out there and to do what you can to take care of the land. And again, hour and a half of weeding every Sunday morning, and we'll continue it because it's ongoing. I mean, because the seeds are in the ground, the next time it rains, the plants will come back up, and that's when you go out and really weed them because they're fresh and they're easy to pull out of the ground. So it's an ongoing effort. It's not going to be solved in a year or two. It's going to be, it's going to take a long time, and but we just need to get the awareness out there. And kind of practice what we preach as Native people, right? We're supposed to be caretakers of our land. So that's one easy way, besides picking up trash and not littering to begin with, but helping to clean the environment and take care of our beautiful Sonoran Desert, because this weed will choke out our native plants, and we don't want that. We've had enough of colonization, haven't we?
And Patty, how does it spread?
Those little flowers have the seeds in them, and so they will naturally drop off. They will be carried by the wind, and then they'll hop and skip across the valley, which if anyone wants to look up information, all you have to do is a simple Google of stinknet, and you're going to see all these stories that have come up about how stinknet has spread. Tucson was trying to get a handle on their stinknet problem, and people down there are saying, "Oh my gosh, it's pervasive." So again, how do you stop it from spreading? Well, your neighborhoods have stinknet. So many empty lots. I drive by, sometimes I can't even look because I want to stop and jump out and start pulling these weeds. I used to live over by Papago Park, and there's a great 5K trail, and I'd run that. And I ran that for years, never saw stinknet there. And then one day after, it rained a couple of weeks before, I come running down the trail, and I was shocked. Where the trail dipped down, there was like a little water area, little wash. It was filled with stinknet. And I was so upset. It's like, it's here in my backyard. So then I started going out with my bags, and I'm out there. I was pulling out these weeds, and I had, several bags filled, and these women walked by, and they were watching me, and I could see them as they were approaching me, and they just passed me by, and I kept pulling and pulling, and then they came back, and they were non-native women. They looked at me and they said, "Are you going to make tea out of that?"
Oh, no.
Yeah, come on over.
It's a heck of a lot of tea there. And I said, no. I said, this is an invasive weed. And I started telling them, you got to pull it out, and it stinks, and don't touch it, but here, smell it. And they're like, "Oh, man, it does stink." And so hopefully I educated them. Hopefully they decided to go pull stinknet. I don't know. But that was kind of funny. It's like, oh, somebody thinks I'm pulling out this plant to make tea, like poisonous tea.
Yeah.
Stink. It's like, it smells like a rotten lemon.
Oh.
If you can imagine what a rotten lemon smells like.
I know someone said it looked like chamomile. They're like, "Oh, I thought that was like chamomile."
Mm-hmm.
The chamomile family. So it can be deceiving.
It's very deceiving. The ignorance of what this plant is, the danger that it presents, and how we all have to pitch in to get rid of it.
And talking about both areas, the StinkNet and also, Sam, your great initiatives in Phoenix, why is it important for the community to get involved, and how can they get involved with both initiatives?
It's important, I think, because as Sam talked earlier about, you can't stop progress, you can't stop development, and the light rail is coming into South Phoenix. What we can do, and this is the time to be at the table, is where the plans are being made. And so one of the things that we're looking at too is creating a space over there by the Rio Salado near that light rail station, a community space. The whole Rio Salado project was started, 30, 40 years ago. And you see the city of Mesa and how it's developed a trail along the Rio Salado coming into Tempe and then into Phoenix. So those two cities in the East Valley have a trail, and they've got fencing up and some art. And we actually took a little tour out there, and we looked around and saw what they offered. And we said, okay, what do we want to see when it gets down to from 7th Street, Central Avenue to 7th Avenue? So how do you want to see that, and how do you want the end user to enjoy it? And so what we're doing today, we're not going to even see come to fruition for a couple of years. But this is the time to do things, not after everything's built and then come back and say, oh, you should have done this or that or whatever. But that means staying on top of city planning. So I think it's important for people to get involved. And having us on your radio program helps spread that word too. We encourage people to come out. We want people to come out. We haven't come up with a name for our group yet, but that's coming. Sam says shirts will come next. And just, get out there and have a say in how your community is going to look. Have a say, because you really can't just leave it to government. It's got to come from the people.
Right. And I would say also, just like how people can get involved, is just like, there's different ways to know about these things. And I think, once again, through arts and culture, if it's from art shows or cultural events, it's like that's a good time to educate people or create awareness about this in a very non-bureaucratic way. So I think there's a lot of different ways, and I think since there's going to be a light rail stop at Central Avenue, and there's going to be a lot of people coming from different sides of town, and Rio Salado is 1 minute, less than 2 minutes away from downtown. It's the closest natural habitat or natural nature you can get to anywhere. And now with the light rail, here's a great opportunity to create more support for what's happening there at the Rio, but to create more stewards, even from people from other places when they come here, when they understand the importance here. And if they're just visiting here every year, they want to make sure that it doesn't change. Nobody wants to go somewhere that they love or they visit and then starts kind of decaying. So I think through arts and culture and other programming, it's going to be really important to get people to be aware of this. And also I think when we talk about other ways, it's the schools around there, how can we help, or what are the ways that we need to bring education for the teachers at those schools to get supported, so they can involve that into their curriculum. I would say education, arts and culture, events, and this platform that you invited us to. It's important. So we need every channel, every platform to get this out. And I think it's just it's a collaboration and cohesiveness for everybody to participate and to share the word for this. So.
And can you both let us know a little bit of any upcoming events? Because I know Sammy had mentioned some workshops. And where can listeners kind of go to learn more about StinkNet and how they can contact either one of you in case they have any questions?
Well, we have our upcoming show, which is going to be our 7th annual show, called our Ancestral Show, which will have food, vendors, art. We'll have poetry. We have some special performers coming out from out of town. So we got that event coming up, which is our annual, and that's kind of where I'm putting all my energy right now, and for that, because that's coming up right away. But and then they can reach out to me at thesagrado.org, or they can look us up on Instagram at thesagrado and message us, and then we can send them information.
Yes, and I think also if people wanted to connect with us and come out and help pull weeds on a Sunday morning, we've now changed the time to 7 a.m.
Right.
So it's a little more manageable. Plus, it's dark at 6 now, right? So 7 o'clock, we'll typically pick for an hour and a half. People can contact you too, right?
Yeah.
To join our group. So the Sagrado website or Instagram, and then come join us because we welcome everyone.
Yep. And we have a little breakfast afterwards too, so we always try to accommodate everybody with a little bit of breakfast. So.
Oh, wow.
Community.
That's yeah, that is
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I would like to thank you both, Patty and Sam, for coming in today to tell us more about all of the work you're doing, Sam, and also Patty telling us more about the stinknet and this invasive plant.
Thank you.
Esquili, we appreciate it, Lanasha. And that means gracias.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, supported by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. Audio editing by Javier Quiroga, and the executive producer is Susan Levy. And I'm host Lanasha Puwadi. We hope you tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please email us at nativetalkaz@radiophoenix.org.